Welcome into the Illini Inquirer podcast. Jeremy Werner, joined by Mike LaTulip tonight. And unlike Joey Wagner and Derek Piper, filled in for me. Big help from them. We get to talk about a win, Mike LaTulip, the first win for Illinois basketball in, 2.5 weeks? Only 2 games during that, but 2 really disappointing, make you think, what are we doing here? Like, what is going on here? Kind of losses. But Illinois bounces back thanks to Bruce Weber and Kansas State, 72-64. Kofi Cockburn, fantastic, 23 points, 13 rebounds, looked like an All-American. Some bad news in this one. Trent Frazier leaves with an injury. Don't know anything yet on that, so sorry, no details, but obviously looks like he's going to be out for a little bit of time. Looked like a knee. Not sure the severity. Hopefully it's a sprain, hyperextension, something like that. But we'll see on that. And Andre Curbelo comes out of the game for a certain time, then comes back in, and then Brad Underwood says after the game, head trauma. So he played through some of that and played really well, 6.7 assists. But Alfonso Plummer goes off, Mike LaTulip, 21 points, 7 threes. When they needed offense, they needed a guard. Alfonso Plummer steps up. So thoughts right away.
I mean, it's got to start with him, right? I think you either start with Plummer or Kofi. And Kofi, you just kind of know what you're going to get from him. I mean, he's 2 games in. He's already, 21 a game and 10 rebounds. He's right, kind of that double mark. So you don't ever worry about Kofi, which is great. That's a great thing to have on your team. But I think Plummer kind of showed his ability to be a bit of a game wrecker on the offensive end. I thought there were 2 different instances in the game. He helped blow it up. They were reeling in that first half before he hit those 3 straight threes. It kind of felt reminiscent of that Cincinnati game where he kind of hit this, I don't know, this little impasse of like, okay, well, we can't really get any penetration. Kofi looks congested down there. And like I said, it kind of felt like Monday night. And then he just, you got to have guys like that, that just don't think, and just do what they do well. And I think it was like it looked like this big weight lifted off his shoulders, especially after he hit the 3rd one. I think that was when he was yelling, "I'm back." But it's amazing to see just how poorly he started the season shooting the ball. And then you look up now, he's shooting like 45% from 3. So it's amazing how he can kind of turn that around in an instance. And I think him being able to do that on the offensive end opens up a lot of things for this Illinois team. And, but he's got to just be committed to the other end, especially now if Trent is missing extended time, he's got to be committed to that end. But I thought he was great in the role that he was playing tonight. I thought Kofi was fantastic, like you mentioned. And they fought. I mean, I think maybe Underwood touched on it in the post game there. They fought. Last night they did not fight. And like we talked about before, they kind of conceded. And tonight they were really just they found a way, would probably be the best way to put it, with Curbelo going out and Trent going down, and now just, hey, ball's in your hands, Austin Hutcherson, who's just now coming off of an injury, played a little bit last night. Like it's been a wild start to the season. So you're happy to leave Kansas City with a win, right? And you are currently on a winning streak, technically, of 1, which is great.
Got to start somewhere, right? And it's a nice step forward after 2 big steps back. And you're right. I mean, Brad Underwood mentioned it, and obviously you had a full week of practice, so it's disappointing, but this team just hasn't played a lot together. And now with Trent seemingly likely out for, more games, that will continue moving forward. And I want to get into that, like what the loss of Trent for any particular period of time could mean for this team, because obviously he didn't make a shot. He didn't score a point in Kansas City here in 60 minutes, which is just absolutely insane. But offensively, Mike, actually before that, you mentioned effort, energy. For me, it was how you respond, right? It was how you respond. And Alfonso Plummer said in the postgame to us, I asked him, what did coach just say to you? Like, how were these last 24 hours? And he said, coach said that, hey, when tough times hit, the weak fall, right? But the strong bounce back, and they respond to it. And we saw that in this game. Another good start for them, 13-7 to start. And then they go on a 9-1 run, Kansas State does, to take the lead. And you're thinking, this is a familiar script. But then they fight back. It was a huge response. I text you, good response. You said great response. What did you see in that? Because time after time, Kansas State kept coming back, took a lead for beginning of the second half, right? 6-0 run. Illinois keeps turning the ball over, but then there's another response. Like, it was simple. It's what you should expect every day. But given what we saw last game, that's what we needed to see.
Yeah, I mean, let's go back to the Marquette game. That game ends, and then you wonder for the next week kind of what practice is like and what the preparation is going to be like for Cincinnati. And I've always said it, your preparation or whether or not you have a really good week of practice, that doesn't just automatically translate to the next 40 minutes of gameplay. It can get you off to a really good start because you're dialed in on the game plan. Everybody's confident because, you're clicking on all cylinders during practice. It can get you off to good starts in games, and that's exactly what happened in that Cincinnati game. But for Illinois, I think what ends up happening, and Andre Curbelo is guilty of this, and there's some other guys that are guilty of this, where they're dialed in to start the game, but once other things happen, missed shots, bad calls, like that's when you start to get on this roller coaster. And I thought tonight they looked like they really made a dedicated effort to just not let those outside factors and things that are out of your control. And I get it, it's weird to say missed shots are out of your control, but good shooters shoot 40%, and so they're missing 60%. So you're going to miss shots. You're going to turn the ball over. You don't want to do it at the rate that Illinois is doing it right now, but those turnovers are going to happen. But how can you limit, like we talked about with Andre Curbelo specifically, but with the team, like how can you limit these compounded mistakes where the missed shots turn into blown assignments defensively, turn into just like a lack of, we talk about Luke Goody, like you feel Luke Goody on defense. Yesterday, Cincinnati didn't feel anybody. It was almost like they looked like they were playing 5-on-0. And just kind of going through. It looked like they were in warmups. But I thought today, Kansas State felt them a little bit. I think that's another thing Andre Curbelo can improve on, right? Is just when he's defending somebody, like you want that guy to feel you. There's too many guys that are confident when Andre Curbelo is guarding them. So I thought the toughness aspect, you can bring that into the game and you can say, this is how we're going to start the game. We're going to punch him in the mouth. And they kind of did the last two games, but the really, really tough teams, are able to sustain that for 40 minutes because there's just so many things that take place during a game. So that was really great to see. And I think you can learn from this film, right? Like when you're playing hard, when you're playing the right way, you can take stuff from that film. You can't take much from the Cincinnati film other than, hey, we need to do our job and we need to play hard.
By 20 assists and 25 field goals, Illinois shoots 52% in this one, 12 3-pointers, and 2 of those assists from Kofi Cockburn. Kofi Cockburn, career high 2 assists. We saw him move the ball. We just saw better ball movement, better offense. There was some, there was a 5-minute period there in the first half where kind of broke down a little bit. What was different offensively? What'd you see?
Yeah, I think, I made this point. I'm not sure if you and I talked about it in reference to the Cincinnati game. I think when you talk about the insertion of Kofi, right, when you integrate him into the lineup, your initial thought is like, well, he's a big man. You're going to feed him, obviously, but how much is that going to impact your offense? And the way it impacts your offense is if Andre Curbelo, and I know it always goes back to Andre Curbelo, but you're the point guard, there's a lot of responsibility here. If you're the point guard, it is just imperative to get other guys involved early, especially when you have a post presence like Kofi. Because if you don't, Curbelo started off that game, and he had a great start, right? He scored 8 points early. Kofi scored 12 points early. But Trent wasn't in a rhythm. DeMonte wasn't in a rhythm. Grandison wasn't in a rhythm. Hawkins wasn't in a rhythm. So now what happens, and this is the comparison I make, and I apologize for anybody that's like, God, this guy makes a lot of football references. But think about a very run-heavy offense, right? When you are trailing a offense, you kind of feel like you're at the mercy of that offense. Like it's really hard to mount a comeback. But when that run-heavy offense gets down, which that's the post presence, right? You're talking about 2-pointers. You're talking about high percentage shots. But if you are down 13 to 15, if that is your offense, it is hard to come back. It is really hard to mount a comeback. The deficits become very hard to erase. You talk about a 15-point deficit, but if your only offense is Kofi Cockburn left shoulder right hook, like it's just impossible because then you have to rely on Trent. You have to rely on these guys to make shots to get you back in the game. And if they're not going early, it's hard to just pick that up mid game.
It's like Kofi Coburn's Derrick Henry and the Titans, right? It's kind of
Right.
what it is. They don't want to get behind too much. I know they got some good receivers, but yeah, it just the ball movement was great, and I thought Andre Curbelo, defensively did not have a strong game, right? He's got to lock in there more, but I thought he was controlled, right? I thought that he had good. You like to use the word pace. I thought he had good pace to him. Still had a couple turnovers, 7-2, man. That's a good game. Only played 20 minutes, and when he was not in the game, Mike, I thought it was felt until Alfonso Plummer kind of saved them. So when he got back on the court late in the fourth quarter, I thought it mattered. Got an assist right away. Jacob Grandison steps into a three for a huge one. I thought that's what you need him to be. I think that's how he leads, right? Is by being controlled, by being paced, and he went 5-hole on somebody and did what Andre Curbelo does.
Yeah, I mean the contrast between how he started the Marquette game and how he started, honestly, these past two games. Like I thought these past two games, he just had a very, he was a little bit more deliberate scoring the ball. Last game against Cincinnati, but I thought this game in particular, you could tell it really did. And I know I tweeted this, but it really did look like a dedicated effort from him to get others involved and play with pace. And I think with Andre, at times he plays at his own pace, but you don't want to like teeter that line of like, okay, what's kind of playing under control and what's nonchalant. Like you can't be so loose with it and just kind of. But I thought he looked very firm early in the game, and just he looked like he knew where he wanted to go. He looked like he knew where to throw the ball, who to get involved. That skip pass, like we talked about, you sent me the text where it's like, how many times does a ball get skipped from corner to corner? And it happens, but it rarely happens for a shot. And part of that is obviously Andre Curbelo, and part of that is Kofi Cockburn, right? Like Kofi Cockburn, the gravity that he creates underneath the basket, like you can have those types of passes. And look, whatever it was, 20 assists on 25 field goals. It helps having 7 of those be catch and shoot Alfonso Plummer shots. But I thought Andre Curbelo tonight, battling through what he was battling through on the bench, in, out, like there wasn't really a rhythm, and he didn't really let that affect him, which I think is, it's a step forward from, some of these previous performances he had. But I'll say this, for a team right now that has 73 assists, 90 turnovers, in terms of guys that have played meaningful minutes and have played most of the games, there's 2 guys that have a positive assist turnover ratio. Andre Curbelo is 22-16, and Trent Frazier's positive, but he's 9-8. Like it's close. So, I think it's on some of these other guys that aren't the prime, decision makers to be solid with the ball. Like, you're going to have Andre Curbelo making turnovers, but there is just no excuse for Andre Curbelo and Coleman Hawkins to have the same amount of turnovers. I know Andre Curbelo's played one less game than Coleman Hawkins has. That can't happen. And Coleman Hawkins has tried time and time again to drive from the top of the key and split that defense. And I think 4 of his 16 turnovers have been from that. So he's got to shore that up, be a little bit more under control. But he's obviously shown flashes that, over these last few games that certainly gives you some excitement.
And I'm looking at this, Mike, like they give Kofi Cockburn 4 turnovers and Jacob Grandison has none. 2 of those are Jacob Grandison's, just throwing it at his feet. Yeah, I mean, Andre Curbelo, 2 of the 18 turnovers tonight. As you said, like that, he's still got a positive assist to turnover ratio. Like the Marquette game was ridiculous, but he's going to turn it over sometimes, but he's always going to be mostly in the positive. What is it with this team? I mean, turnovers are a concern. 18 turnovers are the only reason Kansas State was still in this basketball game, because K-State ended up having 17 more shots than Illinois. Obviously, Illinois made more, but in Illinois totally dominated the rebounds 42-26, but 23 points for Kansas State off those 18 turnovers. What's the issue there?
Yeah, I mean, just like shooting the basketball, right? You need to have confidence to be a good shooter, and when you don't have confidence, you tend to miss shots. And it's the same thing when you're playmaking. It's the same thing when you're making passes. Decisiveness is what ends up breeding good results on the offensive end. I had somebody that tweeted me tonight, was like, "Hey, some of these passes look slow. They're not really on time, not really on target." And my response was, it comes from decisiveness. Quick passes, efficient passes, good passes are from being decisive and saying, "Hey, I am getting to this spot here to make this play," and it just comes from slowing down. But there's been some just really bad turnovers early. Like, it's not just, you'd think a lot of it would come from Kofi trying to feed Kofi, and some have. I don't know, like we talked about during the game, I don't know what the infatuation is of throwing at his ankles. I don't get it. And it's not only Curbelo. Curbelo was guilty of it, but I think Granison did it this game. Coleman Hawkins has done it before. I don't get it. I don't know, but I think these guys just have to really, especially if you're a guy that's not shooting the ball well, which DeMonte isn't. Before this game, Plummer wasn't. Coleman Hawkins can shoot it a little bit better too. If you're one of those guys, like, you can't let that snowball into taking away your confidence to make passes, to make reads. And part of that, it's the reason why Trent doesn't tend to run into that as much as other guys, is because Trent knows his limitations. We've talked about that before, right? He kind of knows who he is. And I think some of these other guys are starting to find out. I mean, that was my thing. Like, I knew when I was in college, right? Like, the more I started dribbling around, like, that just wasn't, like, I was a shooter. It wasn't my strength. Like, I could make plays off the dribble, but I knew we had other guys on the team that could do it at a higher level. So there's no point in me trying to prove that over and over again when it's just not my strength. Like, when we were at Wright State, I think I started off the year like 20 assists, 1 turnover, and I was starting every game, playing 30 minutes. I just knew what got me into trouble and what didn't. And I think that's part of the reason. That's why you stay on the court too. Like, if you're a reliable guy that can handle the ball, that can move the ball throughout the offense, and you're dependable in that sense, and you can tie, if you're a guy that's turned the ball over, I mean, it's the Alfonso Plummer thing, right? Before tonight, and it's the reason why he didn't have many minutes starting this game. If you turn the ball over and aren't defending, you're not going to play.
Yeah,
I mean,
can I own up to my text to you after that?
Yeah, I mean, like, and you said never mind. Go ahead.
After that turnover, I texted Mike, because he texted me, "Oh man," and I tweeted out, like, he's not helping himself for playing time, but it's actually, you can't play him if he can't play defense, and he can't handle the ball, and he's not shooting and making shots. Can't play him. Well, he shut me up pretty quickly. But before we get into Plummer and Frazier, being out potentially, and then obviously Curbelo dealing with what he's dealing with. Coleman Hawkins, the last 3 games against high major opponents, it's been a little bit of a wake-up call, right? Like, I think on both sides of the ball. I think tonight, 2 big threes. I like that he got 4 rebounds after a 1 rebound night the game before. But I mean, this is kind of like what he's going to go through, right? I think this is a really important 3 games for him to learn from. What did we learn about Coleman Hawkins in these 3 games?
It's different when you're not the guy that has all the length, right? Those gaps that were there on those drives against Jackson State and Arkansas State and IUP and St. Francis, they're not there anymore. Like, they're just not. So I think he can still be extremely efficient. He doesn't have to, in my opinion, like, he doesn't have to take guys off the dribble or feel like he has to. Like, I think Coleman Hawkins can do a lot for this team. Just being a guy that stretches the floor, that's active, that keeps balls alive. I mean, here's the reality. I mean, the guy leads the team in steals. He leads the team in steals. He leads the team in blocks. And to me, like, it doesn't lower your pro prospects if you're a guy that does those things. And just on the offensive end, it's like, hey, catch and shoot, move the ball throughout the offense. You don't have to be a guy that takes guys off the dribble, because right now it's just
passer. He's a great passer. Like, and I want to see, not seeing a lot of offensive rebounds like that he can get so many points, Mike, off of crashing the boards.
You're right. And you made the point about his passing. Andre Curbelo has 16 or 22 assists in the season. Coleman Hawkins has 12. He's second. Which is really cool to see out of a guy that's 6'10" and as skilled as he is. But he can still have 3, 4, 5 assist games by just being solid. Like he doesn't always need to be the guy that like takes guys off the dribble and tries these little dump off passes, because oftentimes for guys that big, that leads to charges, that leads to foul trouble. And those turnovers can obviously kill you. So I think he looked a little more settled down today than he did against Marquette. I know he played well against Marquette later in the game. He was a little frantic early, but he wasn't great against Cincinnati. But I thought he found ways to be impactful, hit a big three in the second half, and that can really be his role this year. You got the big fella, you got Curbelo, you got some other perimeter threats. So hey, just do what you're efficient at, and he can shoot at a high level. When his feet are set, you saw him catch that, and he had made up his mind. He was open, catch it. And, it was almost like a catch high, keep high, release it. Like, it looks so good. It's so smooth. It's quick. And he's going to get plenty of those. So that's where his bread can be buttered. He doesn't have to be a guy that is making plays off the dribble.
Agreed. All right. So Trent Frazier likely out for at least multiple games, right? We'll find out here soon. Obviously, huge loss defensively. Really got into a rut here offensively in Kansas City. But Alfonso Plummer becomes very important, right? Austin Hutcherson got 20 minutes tonight, Mike. So if Trent Frazier's out for multiple games, a long time, what's that mean for the team, especially with Plummer and Hutcherson?
Well, it's a big hit. I mean, it's a big hit to this team's defense. This team's, and we saw it a little bit in the exhibition game, right? Him being out, it's just he's the guy that gets through screens. We talk about it all the time. He gets through screens, right? He doesn't get beat off the dribble. He keeps the defense out of rotation. So those are big shoes to fill for some of those guys. I'm looking at Hutch. I'm looking at Plummer. Hopefully when Luke Goody comes back, he can just be another guy in there that you don't have to worry about defensively, because he'll be in the right spot. I think he's a guy that can help out. And Andre Curbelo, like, hey man, this would be a whole different story. Io had a tendency at times to take some plays off defensively, but the thing with Io, man, he was scoring 22 a game. Like that's not Andre Curbelo's deal right now. Like, he doesn't really have that excuse. But I will say this, Andre Curbelo is a guy that, for as much as, try to factor in how much he orchestrates that offense, he's number one in the nation in assist rate right now. 55% when he's on the floor. That's insane. He's number one. And the other funny stat that's compared to that, like if you go on KenPom, you are nationally ranked if you're in the top 450 in the country, right? Andre Curbelo is number one in the country in assist rate, turnover rate. He's not even in the top 450, which is insane. But that's how bad Illinois has been taking care of the ball, because it's not just him turning over the ball; it's everybody. But going back to Trent, he hasn't been great offensively. Especially in Kansas City. He obviously had that. He had the Marquette game, but I think from a leadership standpoint, I think he just does a lot for this team. And I'm even wondering, I think there's a chance here to maybe sprinkle in some alternative defenses. Not saying it's going to happen, but I don't know. I mean, the best way at times to keep a team off balance a little bit is when they kind of have to prepare for different types of defenses. And I could even see a world, this is just me thinking here, where like you go 1-3-1 and put Austin Hutcherson at the top of the 1-3-1 with that length. Like it's something that made Xavier really good. Back in the day when they had JP Macura, who's 6'6" or 6'5", 6'6" with like a 6'10" wingspan. Use that length, make teams throw it up over the top. Like I think there's an opportunity here for you to get kind of creative and shield some of these guys on the defensive end. But at the same time, you can't let the zone defense kind of impact your toughness, because a lot of times the man defense is what kind of puts you in that toughness mode. So, but I don't know. I mean, something to think about. I would be interested to see it and see what they could do with it. But who knows? I'm sure they'll stick to their man principles, and if they do, it's on those guys to step up and be ready to make an impact on that end.
Yeah, because defensively, Mike, I mean, the rebounding was great tonight, but the dribble drive, especially in the first half. Like, Kansas State was running a layup line there for a little bit. Is that mostly Curbelo, or what needs to happen there because they're going to play teams that have a lot better guards than K-State. Not that K-States are bad, but they're just not as good as some of the guys coming up.
Yeah, I think the getting beat off the dribble, that's really where it all starts. How you keep your team out of rotation. We talk about that with Trent. Um, but I'll say this, there were countless times, especially there in the first half, that, and when Trent's out of the game too, guys are getting labeled on screens, right? And like if you get labeled on screens, it's really hard to recover. But just head up guarding the ball, part of that is, yeah, you got to guard your yard, like say. But part of that too, like you can deter a ball handler by your activity in the gaps. So for people that aren't familiar with the gaps, right? Like if I'm guarding the ball at the top of the key and there's two offensive players on the wing, those defenders are in the gap between the top of the key and the wing. And that's what's supposed to deter you from driving. And it's what helps those defenders that are guarding the ball, right? It helps them recover. And that's what Luke Goody's so good at, right? Like he's just a great gap defender. And you can cover up a lot of stuff defensively. So I think that's going to be the story here moving forward. I know Ken Pom recognizes Illinois as technically the number 2 defense in the country. Certainly not the case if you're watching it. But I think moving forward, it's a chance, and maybe it's going to be a thing where Alfonso Plummer knows that he has to do it. And I think that could pull some defensive prowess out of him. But same thing with Austin Hutcherson, right? I think those two guys, how they defend, and Andre Curbelo, I'll throw him in there, how those three guys defend here moving forward and Trent's potential absence, I think is going to determine this team's ceiling here in the next few weeks.
A big couple games coming up, Mike. Just how you build on this, right? UT Rio Grande Valley, projected to be one of the worst Division I teams, even though Matt Figger, Brad knows really well from his time at Kansas State and South Carolina as assistant coach under Frank Martin, and then Notre Dame after that, right? So now can we build on this? Can we string them together? And without Trent Frazier potentially, that could be difficult. But what do you want to see Friday heading into Monday?
Toughness. I mean, that's it. I mean, it's where it started tonight. It's what won them the game tonight. They obviously knocked down some outside shots. But there's something to be said, like when you out toughing your opponent, you feel a little bit more confident, you feel a bit more athletic. You have a little bit more confidence shooting the ball like they did tonight. That's what you want to see. Like, all these games, Plummer's not going to be 7 for 9 from 3 every game. In fact, I mean, this could be the only game all year he makes 7 threes. Kofi is going to have his customary 14 to 24 points and 8 to 14 rebounds. But all these other pieces, I mean, I'll always go back to it. Like, Kofi raises your floor as a team. Like, I think Kofi truly raises your floor as a team, but the guard play is going to determine what the ceiling of this team is. It just is. I mean, go back and look at any team that accomplished anything in college basketball. I mean, seriously. I mean, go back to every single national champion you can think of, Final 14 you can think of. None of them were like built around solely a big man, right? Like they had guard play that could kind of balance it out. And I think that's going to be the story moving forward. Like, what type of production can you get from your guards? Are you setting the tone with your toughness, with your grit every single game? Doesn't matter who it's against. Doesn't matter where it is. Kansas City, Champaign, or South Bend, wherever. It doesn't matter where it's at. Like, that just has to be, those are the non-negotiables, and I think if they truly can make that their identity, like it has been in the past, you start stringing together some wins here. And I think you can take some momentum here going into Big Ten play.
Mike LaTulip, you're the goods, man. It's nice for Illinois to get back on maybe a winning streak here. We'll see if they can stack them together. But just to cool people down, it still could be a good team, right? Like, don't throw them out quite yet. It was kind of the reminder tonight.
Yeah, I mean, they started 9-5 last year, right? And I think it's kind of been the story over the years with I'm not saying with Brad Underwood teams, but with any team. Like, no one is a finished product in November. It's just not the case. You lose a National Player of the Year candidate, and you try to figure out, what life after Iowa looks like. And it's different for sure. And I think this team's got to figure out a way here, and the way they can build is just by doing it by committee. Like I said, Kofi's going to do Kofi, but these guards, these wings, like they're going to have to do it by committee. So that presents a challenge, obviously, but I think it becomes that much sweeter when you improve, when you progress as a team, and you hit Big Ten play, and you look back on the Marquette and Cincinnati game and just kind of look at it as more of an aberration. Be like, man, you remember, like, how weird was that? And then finally things fall into place, guys get healthy, and you take off. So, this team has the pieces. It's just a matter of staying focused, staying diligent, and playing with that toughness, and they're going to be just fine.
Mike, thanks for the time as always, man.
All right, man. Appreciate it.